Yo, what's going on YouTube family? It's your man Jeremy Doodoo here, and in this video I want to talk about my career trajectory and how I decided to pursue each position that I've had, or how I ended up in those positions. So if you're curious about how I got to Fandango, Rotten Tomatoes, Salesforce, and now where I'm at, LinkedIn, this video is something that you want to keep watching. What inspired me to talk about this is the fact that I have done so many ADP list mentee sessions at this point, where I'm talking about my story to the people that I mentor, and there's some value that they've been getting from those conversations. So I was like, let me make a video on this for my YouTube audience, because I know that a lot of designers who work in tech, they typically talk about these sorts of things when they're on a panel discussion at a conference or when they're on a podcast. But since I have this channel in order to help people who are aspiring to become designers and come from backgrounds like myself, I was like, yo, this might be some very helpful information, especially if you're trying to understand how you can make the jump into design, or how you can start out in your career if you're coming out of university or a boot camp. So let's get into it, and I'll start from the very beginning, when I graduated college, right? And up until where I'm at today. When I graduated from USC in 2012, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but the essence and the dream, the pie in the sky vision that I had for my life was that I wanted to be the Malcolm X of the entertainment industry. And the reason for that was because I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. I saw police brutality firsthand. I experienced it, and I had always thought that maybe police and the social justice system are influenced by the way that we are perceived through media, right? Maybe that's why all these killings are going on in communities of color. So I thought, that was the change that I wanted to make in this world. That's the impact that I want to create, and I don't know how, what position that entails, or how I'm going to make that happen. But that was the dream. And I got into a sales job after college, got fired from that role, but it taught me a lot. And then I was like, maybe I can accomplish the dream by working at a YouTube network, right? Because YouTube was blowing up at the time, and these networks were managing talent that was found on YouTube. So folks like PewDiePie and all your favorite personalities, they work with these YouTube networks, right? And that's how they got paid. So I was like, maybe that's where the dream could happen. So I worked at a few different agencies who managed talent, and when I was in these agencies, I understood very quickly that I was not built for that industry. At that time, there were a lot of folks who were getting popular on YouTube by doing a lot of silly things, but having serious conversations that were relevant and pertinent to the issues that I cared about was not something that YouTube networks wanted to focus on. So I could have looked at it as an opportunity, but I didn't at the time. I basically decided that I wanted to pursue everything that I was passionate about and just explore what I wanted to do long term. So I got into 3 different jobs at the time. I was doing social media management for a small PR boutique agency in Santa Monica, California, where it was just like 5 of us who worked there. I was also mentoring and teaching inner city students. I was teaching skateboarding and surfing at a nonprofit called Stoked. And then I also was working with a producer from another YouTube network called Awesomeness TV, where we were producing a website at the time that was aimed at college students. In total, I was working close to 70-80 hours a week, and one day I got into a car accident on the freeway where I rear-ended somebody from behind by falling asleep behind the wheel, and that person ran into 2 other cars. That was a serious wake-up call for me, and I felt like it was a message from God that I needed to change my life. Felt like what God was trying to tell me is that I need to slow down and focus on the thing that I'm actually trying to do, and stop spreading myself thin, doing all these different things just to make a way for myself in life. At that point, I seriously had to question for myself, like, what am I trying to do with my life? You know, how am I trying to get to this longer term vision of helping black and brown people? I don't know. So what I decided to do was go to General Assembly and take the web development immersive course. And the reason being is that I wanted to be creatively limitless. I knew that I had a passion for what I was doing. I knew that I was driven. I knew that I was very creative. I just didn't know how to apply that creativity, right? And I was giving all my talent to all these different companies, but it wasn't for me, right? So I was like, maybe there's something there to start my own business and pave a way for others, right? So I went to General Assembly, wanted to be creatively limitless, wanted to understand the technology behind creating my ideas and creating a vision rather than just having an idea in my mind. And during the course, I learned that a lot of my classmates loved back-end development, so they loved doing Ruby on Rails, but they hated HTML and CSS. So that was an opportunity for me, because I loved HTML and CSS. So what I did was I helped out my classmates with the sites that they were doing. And I also did a few logos for them. I did a bunch of different illustrations to make their sites look a little bit more legitimate than if they did it on their own, where they had no passion for front end or making things look good, but that was my passion. So at the end of General Assembly in that program, I had this entire portfolio of social media work that I did before I started the class. I had a lot of development work, and I was learning about UX on my own, right? I didn't have any like UX portfolio projects at the time, but I was doing personal projects and I had created prototypes, but I was getting to the point where I was making the prototypes real, right? I was doing the back-end development and front-end development for the ideas that I had. And so General Assembly, they had a hiring event. I spoke to a director who owned an agency in downtown LA. She hired me in my first contract role, and I think she hired me because she liked that I was very passionate and I had a large breadth of work, right? I had the illustrations I did for my classmates, I had logos, I had the sites that I coded up that I showed her, and I had all this social media work, and she had her own agency, and she was like, yo, how are you doing this in such a short amount of time? She hired me because of my passion, right? She could see that. I had a 2-month contract there. I was also the first UX designer that she had ever hired, along with another UX person who came out of General Assembly. So we partnered together on projects, and I quickly learned that I loved that UX was all about collaboration and communication and teaching people, right? So after that contract had ended, I had to look for a full-time role, and my goal with looking for a full-time role was looking for somebody who could mentor me around front-end development and UX, because I wasn't sure what path I wanted to take yet. I wasn't clear on what direction or what I enjoyed the most, right? So as I was reaching out to companies, I made it clear, you know, I'm not somebody who's an expert in UX. I'm somebody who's very passionate, which I showed through my work, and I'm somebody who's driven, right? And I have this background in social media, and if you hire me, I can do a lot of different things. Yeah, I decided to pursue a UX career. I wasn't sure what I was getting into. I just knew that I enjoyed it, right? And eventually, one of those people that I reached out to, or who I communicated with, they hired me based on the fact that I think he had a background in coaching students in high school when it came to running, and I had a background in mentoring inner city youth. So we connected on a human level because we had an interest in teaching and helping people in their lives. So yeah, eventually he hired me, and that was like my first salary position that I ever had. And I was earning $50,000 a year, which was a big deal for me. But how that got set up was I was going to a bunch of different meetups in downtown LA, learning from other UX designers who were already in the industry, going to hiring events, putting myself out there, showing people prototypes on the spot. And it was just a lot of curiosity and learning on my own, right? So when I was at MGO, eventually that company got purchased by Fandango, which is the movie ticketing company, right? And I had no idea that that was going to happen, but it ended up being a happy path to, being at a larger company. And while I was at Fandango, got to learn from a lot more experienced designers. They had a lot more resources in terms of research. So I started to understand how researchers, designers, and PMs all collaborated together. While I was there, learned a ton, but got really comfortable with the people that I was around. And I was like, yo, if I want to make a change in this industry, I got to get out of my comfort zone, right? So Salesforce reached out to me. And the reason that I worked at Salesforce was because they wanted to build out a mobile application that focused on philanthropy with nonprofits. And I'm like, yo, my background with nonprofits, mentoring inner city youth, this would be like the dream to build technology for nonprofits. They hired me, I think, because of my background as a designer, but also because of, me working with the nonprofits that I did up to that point, and learned a ton there. Got to really build my confidence as a designer, right? Because now I was leading a team, and I failed. I failed many times, but through failing, I learned how to iterate on my process and really refine how I like to work cross-functionally with my partners. So then when the pandemic hit, Salesforce had a really big reshuffle on a lot of different teams in the company, and I ended up working on a team called Salesforce Industries, which was a part of the healthcare sector. And I have never worked in healthcare, didn't know if I would like it or not, so I was like, okay, I'll give it a chance. And I ended up being there for a year and a half, and what I learned through that experience was that on the enterprise side of things, it's really hard to collect data. It's really hard to do user testing in healthcare because of the many regulations that are there. And so I learned from that experience that I don't want to work in healthcare in the long term. And I also learned that it wasn't aligned with my long-term mission, right? The original intent that I had in the workforce when I started out was to help Black and brown people be perceived in a better light, to help change this world somehow, right? And I felt like I wasn't aligned with that mission at all, right? Doing something for a company that was doing a lot of great things for industry, but it just was not for me, right? Somebody who is passionate about healthcare could make a much of a larger difference than I can, especially when I'm not passionate about that thing. When I thought about the next opportunity, I thought about maybe making my own company once again, building something from scratch. I thought about taking a sabbatical. I thought about getting out of tech altogether and maybe just doing something else. Or if I had another UX position that I was going to be a part of, I wanted it to be more aligned with my long-term vision in my life, right? So when LinkedIn reached out to me, didn't know what to expect, but as I was having conversations with folks, I saw that the leadership was excellent. I saw that the designers who I spoke to had a lot in common with my long-term mission, and I saw that there was Black leadership that I can learn from as well, right? Like other Black leaders that I saw in positions where I was like, yo, these people can be my mentors. Felt like I chose LinkedIn because of a lot of different factors, but I think in the end, what I'm finding is that, you know, I've only been at LinkedIn a few weeks, but I've grown in so many ways already, right? And it makes me trust my intuition, right? If your values, if your mission in life and your interests all align into a job, that's the dream, right? So I think that's where I'm at right now, and I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 3 to 5 years, but right now I'm on a project and a team where I'm focused on growth design, which is an entirely different sort of thinking from product design, right? It's more focused on business and how to increase business metrics as a designer. So I can talk about that in another video, but I think, you know, what I want you to glean from my story is, you know, that I didn't know how all this would play out when I began my career, right? And I also didn't mention that I worked at Rotten Tomatoes, but how I got that job was, I think the product manager really vibed with me because I had a streetwear brand and he was in the street fashion. So all these different sorts of roles that I've had in my career, I feel like it's the thing that I've done outside of design that has really helped position me and sell me and sell myself when I'm going after the role that I'm going after, right? LinkedIn, their mission is to provide economic opportunity to people around the world, and I have been trying to do that on my own by teaching people on YouTube about UX and through ADP lists, right? Like, and I feel like when I say those things to people that I'm speaking to in the hiring process, they are more impressed with me, with the things and my passions outside of design than the actual job that I'm on, right? So like I said, I don't know where I'm gonna be or go in 3 to 5 years. I just know that as I continue learning more about myself and my passions, and how those passions can parlay into the larger term vision, which is to help Black and brown folks, then I will you know, pursue the things that align with that mission, and anything else that comes my way that doesn't align with that mission, I'm just ignoring, right? So hopefully that gives you you know, my strategy on how I pursue my career, because in the end I feel like money's important, of course, especially since I have a family and I want that work-life balance, but I think what gives me the most satisfaction is the fact that I'm doing something that I feel like is meaningful to my career as a designer, and I'm making a change in the world that I feel good about, right? So if you're confused about your long-term career and how you're going to get where you want to get to, I would say my advice is just to focus on the thing that you want to change in the world, understand your interests, understand the kind of culture that you want to work for, and look for a company and reach out to people where you can learn about the kind of vibe that's within that company, right? That if it aligns with your mission, it aligns with your interests, and the people and the leadership are people that you can learn from, and you feel like you connect with them on a human level, and I would say go after that job. But if it doesn't align with any of that, you might get yourself into a design position that is, you know, something that you don't feel like you can grow from. So hopefully, I know that this was long-winded, but hopefully you could take some gems or tidbits from my own journey. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna end it here. If you already know the deal, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.